Ravago Ballarat. I'm the Director of Alumni Professional Engagement at the UC SB Alumni Affairs Office. Welcome to day 2 of the Expo. Hopefully some of you, I recognize some faces from last night, so thanks for folks who joined us on day 1. We're on day 2 now. We previously held the Expo for the first time in Los Angeles. Last fall, we were intending for it to be in the Bay Area this October, but with COVID, we are really glad that we're still able to have this session, to bring in some great alumni speakers, and to welcome our alumni and our guests from around the country and around the world who may not necessarily have ever come to one of our in-person events before. So thanks to everyone for joining us for the virtual version. I mentioned before, you're all on mute, but feel free to turn your cameras on if you would like, and use the chat feature to submit any questions that you have for our panelists. So I now will turn it over to our alumni moderator for today, Andy Ogawa.
Hello, I'm excited to moderate today. Thank you, everyone. I'm a UCSB class of 1995 graduate, double major in business economics and East Asian studies with a focus in Japanese or Japan. Today, our session is called Gauchos and Venture Capital. And besides myself, I'm a venture capitalist, but we have another venture capitalist and 2 Gaucho founders presenting to us today. I guess before we go into the panel session, I just want to quickly introduce myself as well. After graduating from UC Santa Barbara, I did some translation work for a while, and then I attended an MBA school called Thunderbird, and there I studied German. And then I ended up working for a German company called Daimler for over 10 years. In Stuttgart, Germany, Tokyo, Japan, and Detroit, Michigan, and various functionalities such as international sales, controlling, procurement. In 2008, together with my brother, we decided to form a venture capital fund. And the reason behind that was we were lucky enough that our father was an entrepreneur who at age 50 decided to start his own container leasing corporation. Big 20-foot, 40-foot boxes that are leased to shipping lines. His dream was always to go IPO, and 20 years later, he made that happen on the New York Stock Exchange. Wow. With those funds, he said, hey, sons, you're going to be coming in some money in the future. You should learn how to invest. We're in Silicon Valley, and my golf buddy's friend is doing a startup, and I have no time to manage this, so why don't you guys get into it? So I quit my job at Daimler. My brother quit his networking job. And that was our first investment. But then for the next year, all we did was meet different people and learn about the venture capital industry. Because it's very difficult. 1, you need experience, but 2, you need the relationships and the connections to identify and find the good investments to make. So every time we met someone, we'd ask them to introduce us to 2 other people. And we built out our network that way. And 12 months later, we made our second investment. Over the next few years, we ended up with over 45 investments. We deployed a lot of capital. We had good results. So we said, hey, how do we make this into something that lasts for 100 years? Well, we need to bring on other GPs or other partners to invest with us. And we need third-party capital or LPs. And so we embarked on our Quest Venture Partners Fund 2 and raised a $40 million fund. We addressed a lot of family offices, but we also we're able to raise money from corporations such as Sony Music, Nikon, a lot of the Japanese companies. Due to the fact that I'm half Japanese, half American, I was born and raised in Japan before I attended university at UCSB. We're now on our 3rd fund. We successfully raised that in 2019. We continue to invest in early stage venture capital startups, deploying anywhere from $300,000 to $1 million with our initial investment. Then we keep a good portion for follow-on. We lead a lot of our deals, so we help build syndicates and attract other investors to come invest together with us. One more thing, I guess I feel really lucky to be able to meet founders and listen to their ideas and I guess, kind of thrive off of their excitement towards how they plan to change the world almost on a daily basis by listening to these pitches. So I hope that you get that sense of excitement as well with today's session. And I'd like to now, first of all, introduce the three speakers today. First, we have Arvin Gupta, who's a graduate of UCSB, I believe, 97.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll have Damien.
I think we lost Andy's audio there. He looks muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There we go.
For some reason, I got muted. Where did I?
You were just introducing us, so we could probably just take over and introduce ourselves. Is that what?
That sounds fantastic, Arvin.
Andy.
Pass it on to you.
Awesome, buddy. So thank you so much. Yeah, so I graduated '97. And I studied genetic engineering in the Arias lab, actually, and went on and had a very, very strange and long journey to venture capital today, which that's another story for another time. But I founded IndieBio, which is a venture capital seed fund and accelerator. The idea was that biology is a technology that can be applied to world-changing problems, not just human healthcare. And in doing so, we funded some pretty astonishing companies and launched some movements. You might have heard of like Meat Without the Cows. I was the first check into Memphis Meats and a bunch of other these types of companies. As well as two of the other panelists on this panel, Melanie and Damien. And so recently, I also just wrote a book, Decoding the World, based on sort of understanding what is going on with this planet and capitalism and how we can kind of address the future in an optimistic and positive way. And then finally, I also, after taking all the learnings where I've deployed about $35 million, and the portfolio is now worth about $4.2 billion, moved over to Series A, where I joined Mayfield as co-lead for engineering biology practice. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey and I'm excited to share it with you.
All right.
Melanie?
Yeah, all right. We'll just throw it over to me. That's great. So hopefully my phone is tracking with my image because I couldn't get my computer to unmute for some reason, but here we are. So I am also a Gaucho. I graduated in 2001, and my major was molecular biology, biochemistry, or biochemistry, molecular biology. I also minored in chemistry. I just kind of couldn't get enough of the sciences and all the amazing professors on campus. So much great stuff going on. Funny story though, I don't think Arvin knows this, even though I know Arvin well, but I actually entered UCSB as a business major, but had changed my mind right before classes started because I thought, I was just so torn between the science and the business, and I thought, maybe I'll learn the business later, it'll be okay. So 15 years later, I went on to get my PhD. I stayed in research for many years, published, I think over 12 first author papers, some book chapters, some online video protocols. I ended up teaching a little bit, and then decided, when I had this idea, I just kind of couldn't put down, decided to start a company with it, and kind of made that big transition from academia into a startup. And we are now a Series A funded company. We'll be raising our next round in the spring, but so far so good. Things are going well, and I'll be excited to share a lot of our novel technology with you guys. So yeah, thank you.
Damien, please.
Sure. My name is Damien Cadella. So I did my PhD at UC Santa Barbara in Galen Stuckey's lab. My PhD thesis ended up becoming Cayuga Biotech, which is the company I founded, with two other UCSB PhDs. So if anyone has any questions, especially if you're grad students or any of those, I guess that's my field.
Fantastic. So Arvin, How did you connect with Melanie and Damien? Meaning IndieBio, your accelerator, your fund has invested into these two companies, I believe. So how were you able to connect with them, and what made you want to invest into the two companies?
Yeah, so the way we work is we're a well-known brand now. We're one of the premier places to go if you're a scientist looking to become an entrepreneur. And so both of them reached out to us. And what made, the second part of the question I think is really interesting. What makes a VC want to invest, or what made me want to invest in both Melanie and Damien, was two things. Well, really it's three, but I focus on two. One is, and I really am technology, like I'm always looking for astonishing science. Both of them had astonishing science. Melanie is 3D printing human organs. Now, everyone knows 3D printing human organs is a terrible idea if you're using the technology that everyone is, inkjet printer technology, because you just don't have the resolution. It was well known, and I would actually say I'm not interested in investing in that kind of company. When Melanie came to our lab, actually downstairs, you probably remember this, Melanie, sitting on the kitchen table, going through, we've got a laser. Why a laser, right? It's two photons. Why two photons? And you see a depth of understanding and knowledge about a problem that you're like, okay, this is the person who's going to solve that. If anyone is going to solve it, it would probably be this person. And then really understanding alongside that, if they can solve this problem, is this going to change the world in some significant way? Is this going to be meaningful? For what I do, that part is really important. Like I'm a little less interested in funding iterations of technology, even if it might make some money. Like for me, like there's plenty of VCs out there that are looking to make money, and they'll do that. They'll so-call that up. I want to take the most risk in the world, and that leads to breakthrough ideas. So same with Damien, right? What they're doing is around coagulation of the blood inside your body, and so like that's a very difficult thing to do. But if you can stop a lot of like bleeding type diseases and disorders and save a lot of lives. So it's a combination of astonishing insight, a person that can follow that through, and then a world that changes because of it.
Thank you. Damien, maybe you can explain how difficult was it to convince Arvin to invest into your company?
It's a good question. So we went through the New York panel, so we don't really know how the sausage was made.
I'll tell you later.
Exactly. Once we get our next round, I think. But we've been incorporated for about 5 years. That's when I finished my PhD. So I think, kind of not specifically to Arvin, but we had been trying to break into sort of that venture area, whether in the Bay or in Boston, for a while. So it does require a lot of persistence and luck as well.
And yourself, Melanie?
Yeah, so well, I was absolutely on fire with this idea. As Arvin said, we're working on 3D printing human organs and tissues, and I had seen the problems in all the other approaches, and I was so on fire with this idea. Like, we're absolutely going to solve this. I know why we're different. I know how we're better. I got my PhD in physiology, biophysics. I can tell you exactly why this is going to work. And poor Arvin, I probably didn't take no for an answer. I remember we dove down deep really hard and got to the point where I was just drawing things out on paper in front of him. And I think, being passionate and really knowing your idea will work, not just kind of like believing in yourself, but having done the preparation and being really involved is important.
Yeah, thank you. So Arvin, as a venture capitalist, the idea is very important, but if the founder can't implement it, it means nothing. So when you're looking to invest into companies or founders, I guess, what leadership or what sort of qualities or characteristics are you looking for?
You know, like Melanie said, and actually they both said it, persistence, right? Because you're going to hit, so persistence plus expertise in what your problem you're trying to solve. Because here's the thing, you're going to run into a problem you didn't expect, hands down. You're going to run into many of those problems. And if you don't have either the persistence or the experience, you're not going to be able to design your way around it or through it. And you'll literally die there because you have no idea what to do next. And so that becomes really, really important. You know, all VCs are different. And, you know, as I like to say, there's all sorts of ways to make money as a venture capitalist, right? Which is a short way of saying there's no one style that's right. And so my style is to be optimistic and bet on people that will hit above their weight in, you know, so to speak, right? Like, so if you go to Sand Hill Road, oftentimes they'll take a pitch deck, especially if it's a deep science pitch, and they'll go straight to the team and judge it on that page, right? Oh, they don't have like the world's luminary, this, that, and the other. I think, you know, like to me, that's the advantage I have, right? Like, because I could understand the science well enough to say, is this person going to be able to execute on that? And I think like that is something that you can cut through a lot of noise on. Like if a VC is only going to look at that page and only look for a certain profile, well, they're out anyway. So who cares? So the people you should be focusing on, right, are the VCs that are interested in creating astonishing companies. And there's a lot of them out there. And then, like Melanie said, show that you know this is going to work. Like every question I asked Melanie, and you know, every question I asked Steve Chambers, who was doing the due diligence on Daniel, there were great answers there. And while they may not be proven, there was an answer of an assumption we needed to test. And as long as you can test assumptions, you're going to make it.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Let's see, Damien, and maybe you can talk about a bit about what the difficulties of leading a startup and a startup organization is.
So I think it was good preparation coming out of the PhD, because you go from a starving PhD student into a starving entrepreneur. So there's not much of a lifestyle change. But you really learn, it's a whole separate process. I think you've seen, you know, Melanie had studied several different subjects, Arvin as well. While I came in as a PhD, I had also picked up, not I guess quite a degree, but at least something in Slavic languages. So one, I think the more versatile you can be, because really you're going to be a generalist. You have to learn enough about legal stuff, about, you know, business, all these things. And really all I knew about business at the end of my PhD was that I didn't want to be in a lab anymore. So it was very much a trial by fire and sort of needing to pick things up very quickly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Melanie, how about yourself? Have you encountered a difficult situation running a startup that you're able to overcome through some ingenuity or through something that you can share with us?
Sorry, can you repeat the first part? I was having another issue. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you've had a situation running a startup that was difficult that you were able to overcome through some ingenuity. Can you hear me?
I lost you again.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you're able to overcome. Can you hear me now? I guess not. Everyone else can hear me, or?
Yeah, Andy.
Okay. Well, let's see. Let me let me go to a different question for a second here. Melanie, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So let's try. How about Damien? What's the next scientific hurdle you're working to overcome?
So we had always been a military-focused project. So this thesis kind of came out of Professor Stuckey's work with QuickClot. And so from a business standpoint, VCs run away from the military, and for good reason, at least on the regulatory side. So we actually just finished a study going into our lead indication for the FDA, which was for anticoagulant reversal, so specifically antiplatelet drugs like Plavix. And so actually that was with the IndieBio funding. So they were the first ones to kind of fund that quote unquote killer experiment. And so we're using that to really jumpstart hopefully our Series A round. So it's I guess the short answer is specifically for us, it was that experiment, but get the money that you can do to get that experiment that gets investors really excited about not just the science, then long-term the business viability as well.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, for investors, you have to share your vision, the passion, but also the return, right? And a lot of times when I'm investing into people, I ask the founders, what's your definition of success? Because usually, when they're successful or when they feel as though they've been successful, they're more willing to exit or have a liquidation event, right? And that's usually how the investors get their money back. But people have different goals and motivations to start a company. Sometimes it's a lifestyle business. Sometimes, unless they get to $1 billion in revenue, they're going to sell. Many different reasons, motivations. As a VC, though, it's always very interesting to understand what the definition of success for the founder is, because it's usually directly tied with how the investors get their money back. Melanie, can you hear us now? Are you back?
I can hear you clearly.
Oh, fantastic. If you don't mind, I want to ask you that question again. I mean, can you share with us a time when things were really difficult, but you've come up with an interesting solution to tackle the problem at your company?
Yeah, so our company is pretty much solving the most technically difficult problem in organ and tissue engineering, which is the printing of microvasculature that matches human physiology at speeds and resolutions that can build a functional human organ. And so that's never been solved with extrusion printing, laser printing, standard laser printing is far too slow. And so really getting through the optical systems, the build-up, all of that was just the start. So building our novel optical system and finding the right people to do that with. People are absolutely critical. They don't teach you in graduate school how to manage a group of people. They don't teach you how to hire. They don't teach you how to do all this stuff. And so I would say that was one of our earlier challenges. And then when it comes to the science, building the optical system and then tackling actually all the vascular flow equations that no one's ever had the complex systems that we're building at their fingertips. They're really only found in animals, plant leaves, things like that. So how to even model that and start developing it and building it is a problem that we tackle. And per Damien's point, you really have to be ready to learn everything about everything. So one thing that was a surprise to me in our company is that I never thought that we would end up delving into the software space, but it's starting to look like we're going to have to go there, because if you tried to print a human organ at a 1 micron resolution and the entire organ, that's develop ways to do large data handling for 3-dimensional images is something we've actually done with our group.
Wonderful, wonderful. I see that there was a question in the chat that Arvin's started to answer. Is there, just to read the question, maybe Arvin, you can articulate it a little bit more, but this was from Devanshi, and was wondering, can you touch a little more about your experience transitioning into venture capital and the roadblocks you faced to get there?
Yeah, you know, like I had a conversation with Michael Moritz. He's made so much money in venture capital, he's been knighted by the Queen of England. Um, and I was like, hey man, like I'm thinking about doing VC, you know, what do you think? He's like, terrible idea. He's like, well, look, there's only a few ways in and they're all closed, right? Either you're wealthy enough to buy your way in, or you're asked in because you did some entrepreneur, you were invested in by a VC. You know, and that's pretty much it. He's like, that's it. Like, and so my path of creating like an accelerator that was focusing on something that never had been done before. Basically, he was just very kind to me, but I was like polite and said, yeah, it sounds crazy what you're doing. A friend of mine later told me he thought I was on a suicide mission, which was actually correct. It's very, I mean, he wasn't incorrect in saying that. And so, I think the key, and when I say all that is like, the roadblocks of getting into venture is getting someone to believe that you have variant perception into a space by which you could manage and deploy money and turn it into more money. Now, I didn't realize this until I couldn't have articulated that to you 7 years ago, because I went in with variant perception. And so, or some expertise that allows you to have variant perception. And what I mean by variant perception is being the ability to see a bag, what to everyone else looks like a bag of lemons, and be able to see one orange in there, right? And so how you do that is very different for everyone. And that's why I say, like, man, venture capital, there's tons of ways to make money, right? Like one partner of mine is just really good at knowing people. Like, they're just like a savant at knowing people. Like, that person's amazing. Oh boy, like they seem no different than someone else, right? Like, and I'm like, nope, and they're right every time, right? Another person like myself, I'll say, well, if this works, it'll be astonishing for the world, right? Okay, cool. So I think that's the key that you need. And that's why I say, like, a journalist, like Michael Mertz is a journalist. The guy who took over my job at IndieBio, Poe Bronson, he's an author, he's a journalist. And so, yeah, it doesn't matter your background. It matters that you have a point of view in the world. And if you don't have a point of view in the world, then forget it. You might as well, do something else. So, so hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, I know. I think those are amazing thoughts. All right, so I have an interesting question. Just to make this fun a little bit, and I want to ask all three of you, if you know what you know now, and you're able to go back and talk to yourself while you were a student at UC Santa Barbara, what suggestions or recommendations would you give yourself?
Daniel, want to start?
Sure. What would I tell myself? If it was early on, I would tell myself to be patient and to be as flexible as possible, because what I thought I was going to do when I was starting my PhD was completely different from what ended up happening. I really didn't even envision being an entrepreneur probably 2014, so right near the end of my PhD thesis. At the end of it, I would again tell myself to be patient, probably tell myself to avoid a couple of mistakes I made early in the entrepreneur process, and probably to push toward the Bay or toward Boston a little bit quicker. So early on, be flexible. Later on, be flexible and do a couple of things differently.
Being flexible. I think that's very important. Melanie, how about yourself?
There we go, unmuted. Excellent. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with the path I took coming out of UCSB. I worked, really hard in the sciences. I think one thing I didn't do as much of that I would have liked to would have been to start to make connections a little earlier on in the VC world and to understand a little bit more of how it works. I luckily do have a few connections there, but it wasn't something I actively pursued while I was in graduate school, and that would have been a great opportunity to do that. I think that, and then, some additional management classes. I always kind of knew I was headed this direction. So it wasn't a question of, do I want to do this or do I not want to do this? It was a matter of when I was going to do it. And I think sciences and your career otherwise can be all consuming. And I think it's important to remind yourself to be well-rounded, go to those listening to experts and making those connections. So I think I would have focused a little bit more on that.
Okay. Arvin?
Yeah, so, oh man. There's a book. I could literally write another book on that. It's actually probably not a bad idea. So I had a very unusual path, right? And I mean, the first advice I'd give myself is you're going to go through a lot of pain, and that's okay. I mean, I'm okay. I'm okay with pain. And when I say pain, I mean the existential dread of not knowing what you're going to do with your life is something that I had to deal with. Not everyone does. Like my sister, straight to med school, straight to blah, blah, blah. Now, top surgeon in the country, and super happy with her life, right? Great. Never questioned what she was going to do. Great. Mine opposite, right? And so, I think I got very lucky in that I trusted myself to take that walk. And whatever it brought. And so, I think the other part was, I was very curious. So first of all, I was on the 5-year plan, 92 to 97. I probably should have done the 7-year plan, in hindsight, I did genetic engineering, but I also did all the units for an economics degree that I didn't bother to fill in. And then I also did a bunch of philosophy units, enough for a minor, didn't bother to fill in. And it's just a curiosity. And all of those things came back later on in ways I never understood. And that's why I can write a book today, right? That's why I can invest in Damien and Melanie and hundreds of other entrepreneurs and relate to them and connect these dots that literally no other PhD can, because you necessarily as a PhD become an expert in something, and as you become an expert, you oftentimes the open-mindedness to the unexpected goes away, and I think that is a duality that's super hard to keep. And so I think to bring this back to advice for myself, I mean, I'm really happy with the way things turned out, so I wouldn't change anything. But I think, party hard, all of those things,
I was on the 5-year plan too.
Yeah.
I did extra classes, no big deal.
I lived at 6681 DP, it was, I think that's all important. Experimenting with life as much as experimenting with your career. That's the time you get to do that, really. And it's so formative, I think. And so any advice I'd give myself is continue, go do that. And, you may look like a wreck for a little while, but keep believing in yourself and it'll all work out. And that's what it comes down to, is you just got to believe in yourself and invest in yourself, and it will work out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think one of the top skills for entrepreneurs is flexible problem solving. And so by continuing to put yourself in situations where the unexpected happens, you can think your way out of it, think your way around it, cultivating that skill over and over and over again. And maybe some of us had exposure to that living in Isla Vista, I don't know. But, really, really, thinking through changing the environment and being able to quickly and confidently through that. So any exposure you can kind of give yourself to that in life, I think is really valuable.
Yeah. For me, I would tell myself, take some communication classes. I realized more and more as an adult and professionally, even the biggest multi-billion-dollar deal at the end of the day is basically negotiated between one person and another. And so how you present yourself and your ideas in a concise manner that's easily understandable makes a big, big difference in being able to get something done and to work with other people. So it would be, take more communication classes, learn how to present yourself a little better, as well as try to take classes that force you to work in teams. Because a lot of what we do, we work in teams together towards these big goals. It's not done by one person. So the better you can coordinate and work efficiently as a team, I think the more successful you will be in the long run. All right. Now, since we are in this strange COVID environment, I think we do need to address the situation as well. How has this pandemic and the shelter in place and the new kind of work lifestyle impacted your business? Let's start off with Damien.
So I think I don't know if helped us, but at least not hurt us as much as other people. When the world goes to hell, biotech suddenly becomes, we're less evil and more saviors of the world. I think people are more likely to put some money in. Arvin, you can confirm that.
Yep.
So that's been helpful. There's a thing in biotech kind of called a virtual company, virtual pharma. And so we have manufacturers in Germany, setting up clinical trials, hopefully, in the next year or two in the US. So we can kind of, with Zoom and all that, we're used to talking to each other. Ideally, we'd all be in one place, but we've kind of made it, we've made it work for ourselves, but put things in place so that once the world gets back to some semblance of a new normal, that we can execute on what we need. So I think breaking things down into smaller groups and really, like Melanie was saying, and Andy, I think you were saying also, with really trusting groups and trusting your colleagues, that's critical. If you want to be the person fully in charge and micromanage everything, you're going to drive it right into the ground.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How about you, Melanie? How are things changed?
Yeah, so, we were very focused on building human tissues. We had an active liver project, and we were demonstrating transplants in animals when the news of SARS-CoV hit. I had actually just finished, so this is a fun story. So Monday morning, we have a big team meeting, and I just finished rolling out if it gets worse, this is what we'll do, and this is what our lockdown procedures will look like. That afternoon, our county locked down. So we went immediately, we had an action plan. So it was lucky we thought we were a step ahead. We were actually right in lockstep with viral spread. But two things have happened that I think are really interesting. So one, because we are a human tissue engineering company, one of the first tissues we actually demonstrated to work at IndieBio in 2017 was a human lymph node. So we can recreate a human lymph node. These are the things that swell up when you get sick in your neck, and they're great. If you can stimulate them the right way, you can have them generate human antibodies, novel human antibodies to viruses, pathogens, and we demonstrated this already with Zika virus. So we went ahead and did it with SARS-CoV-2, and we're currently taking we have 5 antibodies we're taking through preclinical studies right now. These are the same things that Regeneron and Lilly have built. So we have a host of these. We've demonstrated now that it works in multiple viruses, and we've reduced the time for human antibodies. We don't need animals, we don't need infected people, to about 3 weeks. So all in all, like, it was a nice thing to add to what we were already doing with human tissue. We said, okay, let's revive this human tissue to be pursuing that as alongside of other tissues. The other thing I've noticed is that oddly, productivity seems to have not taken a big hit with our team. Part of our action plan was to have people working in shifts. So we never have everyone from one group on site at the same time. We have shifts of people. So if one person comes down with something, it's unlikely the whole group would be wiped out. But that has led to a lot of people being able to work from home and really execute on some beautiful work, some beautiful theory, and really come in and just do exactly what's needed in the lab to keep everything running. So oddly, I feel like it's accelerated us in a lot of ways. So it's an interesting way to think about work.
Yeah, you're sometimes able to find opportunities, or I guess growth within crisis, right? You're forced to adapt. How about you, Arvin, with your accelerator, admitting founders into it, or even just choosing whom to invest, not being able to meet the founders in person? Has your investment philosophy or approach changed?
So yeah, I mean, it depends on the stage. With IndieBio, oftentimes we didn't meet the founder already because if they were in another country or something, we didn't fly them in before we wrote a $250K check. And so we could do a lot of that due diligence over months on the phone or via Zoom. At Mayfield, doing Series A, writing $10 million checks becomes a different proposition. You can't do that over Zoom. You have to meet someone. And so you can do a lot of the diligence and conversation, but when you're getting serious and you're going to write a check and you're like, okay, like let's actually do this, you have to meet. And the way we do it is you go for a social distance walk, you go for a social distance hangout, and you can just get to know people, and you're going to see signals that you do in person that you just don't see in Zoom. And I don't think anyone right now is writing $10 million checks without meeting people. You could write a $30, $40 million check without meeting people, because that company that's raising like 70 million is going to be a financial transaction. You can read income statements and understand it. You could write a 500K check, right? Because the outlying risk is small, but the 10 million size is the weird one, right? It's like pre-product, still a big check. Like that's where it really is. You're betting on the founder to be able to take care of that investment. So yeah, it's split there. But it's really important. Like in the end, early stage investing is about people, and the people that you're investing in that could solve a big market problem. And in my case, through technology, through a biology or deep science approach.
Exactly. Yeah, we focus on early stage venture capital as well. So when the pandemic hit and we first had shelter in place, the first question was, how do we make sure that our existing investments can survive the next year? So a lot of our existing investments were topped off, I guess, with bridge loans and whatnot to make sure that there's enough cushion there in cash flow. And Q3, I would say we started actually investing into founders or companies that we had never met with before. And for us, though, what's most important is within the due diligence process, talking to other individuals that have worked with the founders pre-COVID, to be able to assess, the various characteristics of the individual, not just through Zoom, but actually talking to someone who's actually worked together in a physical presence. So that's how we've tried to adapt a little bit. But yes, our check size is 300,000 to $1 million. So we're not in that 10 million spot where I agree. It's kind of, you're in between of a product or a company that's already proven itself. So you really do need to get a better understanding of the founders. When I also meet founders and we're about to invest, I like to go to lunch with them and see if they thank the waiter when the waiter pours the water or not. Small things, small cues to try to get a better feeling of the individual and what they stand for and what they respect. All right, I think we have another question. Let's try to address here from Joseph. Thoughts on valuation of a company, how best to estimate the value with a biotech company versus say a normal tech company. And I think Arvin, you wrote valuation is a result of how much money you raised divided by equity sold for. So 20% to 30% is normal range. Biotech tends to be 25 to 40%. So I think what Arvin's trying to articulate here is that it's very difficult to per se value a company through discounted cash flow or any sort of modeling. But instead, with each financing round, expect to dilute yourself or give away 20 to 30% of the company. And the reason why that usually happens is because, you know, then if the investor takes too much of the company from the beginning and the founders have to continue to raise, they're going to be left with such a small sliver of the company that they may lose motivation even to continue to stay with the company, right? So you want to find balance between the investors and the founders to be able to reap the rewards of a successful company. Hence the 20, 30% dilution kind of factor plays out. So a lot of people, you know, I mean, early stage company, okay, we're going to value you at $4 million pre-money and $1 million goes in the company. So that means post-money, so 4 plus 1 would be 5. So post-money valuation of the company is 5 million, and that 1 million that the investor put in, that represents 20% of the company. And that's usually how these early stage valuations are constructed and deals are made. Would you agree to that, Arvin?
Yeah, you know, I think the color there would be pretty simply like, you're going to raise some money to hit a milestone, right? And how much money are you raising versus how big of a milestone is that gets you to some sort of pre-money. So in other words, here's a simple thought experiment. You could say, okay, I'm going to build a 3D printer to make human organs. I need $50 million to start, right? $50 million. You know, I've got a piece of paper here and a drawing. Look, like it'll work. Here's a drawing. And you're like, but I just need $50 million. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll give you $50 million, Melanie. But who's taking the risk here on that 50 million? How do we value that, right? So if I'm going to drop $50 million into this company, I'm going to take most of the company, right? Because it's like all the risk. Whereas, and that's a large cash outlay. Whereas, let's say it's $250,000 that you're going to put into the company. Well, now you could start to say, okay, well, it's a smaller amount of money, smaller amount of risk. I could take a smaller piece of the company. And so valuate, like there's a implicit pre-money valuation that is somewhere based on where the company is. Pre-money means the valuation before you add the money in that goes into the company, right? That then gets you to like the valuation, right? So if I invest $2 million into a company at a 10 million pre, that becomes a 12 million post, and that's the valuation.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that pre-money is fairly implicit and it's not calculated, it's not derived, it's just kind of felt.
Yep.
It's sad to say, it's just felt. But, and that changes based on the team. Now, if like literally the world's best scientists and like the CEO of Google and like all these people came together and said, we need $50 million to build this thing, you'll be like, sure, take it and I'll take 10% of your company, because the odds of that success go way up based on all the people at the table. So that's how you start to think about it. Now, generally a Silicon Valley round is some amount of money for an 18-month runway that tends to dilute the company by 20 to 30%, 20% if it's hot and has traction, 30% if it's not. That's kind of all the rough math around it. And so the general principle, right? I said before, the tactical principle you could just apply. So then the question would be, well, I should just raise as much money as possible if the dilution is going to be the same. Absolutely, but pre-money is sticky.
Yes. Great, great. Okay, so we're starting to press on time, but I think I just want to ask really quickly, each one of you.
Andy,
yes.
if I could just jump in quickly from the founder's perspective. Again, we're in therapeutics, so like we're talking hundreds of millions, billions, but really don't worry about the valuation. For my thing, you know, I invented this drug, I'm the expert. You know, I'm going to be chief science officer at Cayuga. Like, I will hopefully keep stay in that position and keep moving forward. But it's really, there's so much money that needs to go in, that Arvin's big mantra is don't die, just
Yes.
get the money. And someone who's really going to haggle you on terms doesn't really care, specifically about Cayuga. My goal, again, our next round is raise 10 million to get us to this X point. Whatever that valuation will be. I'll probably be unhappy with it, but that's how it works. So get the money, keep it moving forward, and it's going to pay off.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Understood. Just really quickly, from each of you, if you're addressing to the students right now, or even alumni that may be considering starting their own company, what's your suggestion? Maybe Melanie first. Sorry, we can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay,
Can you really not hear me?
now we can hear you.
No, now you can hear me. Okay, great. Okay. So if you're thinking of setting up your own company, make sure it's something you're passionate about first and foremost, because you're going to be doing it for a long time if you're successful.
Yep.
If you don't like what you're doing, don't do this. It's
Yep.
not, if you're not inspired by it, if you're not passionate about it, you're going to have to go through a lot of hard times and dark days, and you've got to really love what you're doing and want to see it through. So
Thank-
that would be the first thing I would advise.
Thank you. Damien?
Yeah, Melanie's spot on. The other thing I would say is, with regard to those dark days, the earlier you can do it, the better. So I'm 34 right now. So I was finishing my PhD as 27 or 28, and it's a lot easier to do it when you hopefully have fewer debts, no family. You can gamble a couple years, whereas the older you are, it's a lot harder to gamble if you have a family, other debts, to not make any money.
Mm-hmm. Point taken. How about you, Arvin?
Advice to founder. Yeah, I mean, I think understand the change you want to see in the world. Really understand that, because that's your North Star. And, pivots happen, shit happens, but as long as you know the change you want to create in the world, you'll never lose your way. And that's like so critical. I've watched many companies pivot, find traction, but the founder hates the new pivot, and then the company dies because your heart's not in it, right? And so it's to both of their points, right? Melanie's and Damien's, like, it's just, that's what gets you up in the morning. Like for me, myself, right? Like what, the change I want to create in the world is help solve human and planetary health, right? Like it's a pretty fundamental thing. There's climate change that has to be solved. And, we all have parents that are getting older, and we all know people that are sick. And when someone gets sick, you could, like, money stops mattering, right? Like it's like, everyone's chasing money. And then someone gets sick and you're like, you pay anything for them to be healthy, right? Like you give away anything, right? And so it's like, for me, knowing that change, no matter how, like, it allows me to pile the hard shit on, right? Rather than kind of like, oh, okay, I could kind of relax and semi-retire now, right? Like, who wants to do that? There's lots of, hard challenges left in the world to go through, because it results in the change you're looking for. And I think that can drive you, and that'll be different for everyone. And like, I always say this, there's no, there's no value statement to the change. Like, wanting to raise great kids is a change in the world that's worth making, right? And so I think, like, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, like that to me is the driver. So for a founder, and we'd start every Indie Bio batch with that exercise, and Melanie knows. So that's what I would say.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, yeah, I'd like to thank all of our panelists today. I think that was quite a insightful discussion, and thank you for being candid with us and sharing your experiences and thoughts. I'm going to pass it over to Karen to kind of close this up, give any information or.
Andy, before we go, so I know there's a bunch of people that are actually interested in starting companies on this thread. Shoot me an email if you have an idea that you want to chase. And my email address is arvin@mayfield.com, and it's right there in the chat.
Thank you so much. And thanks, Damien, also for leaving your info in the chat. That's a good segue into my closing remarks. I just want to remind folks, you've seen it in a few places, but we are doubling down on our GauchoNetwork.com platform. So Gaucho Network is our LinkedIn style professional networking site. So we've got thousands of Gaucho alumni in there who want to give advice, want to help you along with your career, want to connect. So we're really in this time of COVID, and we're not doing in-person networking events. A lot of you may have been to our yearly Gauchos in Tech in-person event in the Bay Area in years past, and who knows when that is ever coming back around. So we're really trying to build a sense of Gaucho community within this platform. So when you log into GauchoNetwork.com, there's a specific Gauchos in Tech group that you can join. We'll have, folks are in there having conversations, sharing advice, posting jobs, posting information. So we'll be sending out reminders about how to log in to that. But again, this is just a small sampling of the fantastic alumni that we have out there doing great work. So I want to thank Andy and Arvin and Damien and Melanie for your time and expertise today. If you're interested, later on this week, we have a Success in Tech session happening on Thursday. We have an entrepreneurs spotlight happening on Friday, next week, Monday. We have a specific biotech founders session happening. So lots of great alumni lined up to also be sharing their thoughts and expertise. So keep an eye out for some reminders about that. We'll be sending a survey out. So we would love to hear from you about topics that you would love to hear about in the future. But thanks to everyone for taking the time to join us. Thanks again to our panelists. Thank you to my colleagues in College of Engineering and in the Alumni Affairs Office for all of your help on the back end with details and logistics. This is a really great opportunity for us to connect with folks virtually during the pandemic. So we want to make sure that everyone is feeling connected to the Gaucho family and is feeling like you've got this community behind you. So thank you.